Science is everything that we do, and women play a critical role in making things happen. So for us, we're very excited that the United Nations have actually put aside this moment where we can actually and appreciate the role that women are playing in science. But also for those that are coming up, to showcase and say, it's possible, you can do it. We recognize we are coming from an environment where science or STEM subjects are seen as male-dominated subjects. And so creating an opportunity for girls and women to see there are women out there who have done something, and therefore there's space for them also to contribute.
STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's essentially what the acronym is about. And for us as Microsoft, really, STEM is the foundation of the company. So Microsoft really is a technology company, and what founded the company or what made the company run is really about innovation. So for us, and the whole idea about innovation is about trying to address identifying problems and solving problems. And really, when you talk about science, that is what science is about. It's all about looking into ways that how can you make lives better, and how can you and so we really look at in terms of solving problems. For us as Microsoft, why we are here is because as a company, as a technology company, we really look into ways in terms of how can our technology be able to try and devolve into every single aspect of our society. And really, it's not just about people using the technology, but it's really people using the knowledge about the technology to create. And as people create, then they learn how to solve problems. And that's what we are here for. And then the other important thing for us as Microsoft is that we look a lot into diversity as being a very important aspect of the company. And for us to be able to be successful as a company, we need every single person to play a role in it. So whether male, female, we really need to have that. And one of the things is we have a gender imbalance within the industry. So that's why as Microsoft, we are really here today.
Now it's more biased to men or boys. And this is why we're excited about this day, so that we can actually create that space and make sure that we push towards having a level playing field. The culture perception and cultural experience and background, where it is perceived that girls can only do certain things, or science is for men, and boys and girls can do other things. And so for us, trying to break that cultural barrier is critical. There's also a lot of stereotyping as a result of that cultural background, making the girls feel they cannot do science subjects. And so creating a space where we actually give examples of what has worked is critical to us. And so this is very important.
There's been a lot more disadvantage for the women trying to get into tech. So of course there's a lot of the stereotypes, as she's mentioned, there's a lot of the culture. Because if you were to step back a little bit, if you were to go back into schooling, especially at primary, secondary school level, at that point, if you were to look at the boys or the girls when it came to the maths, the sciences, it was more or less equal. Even in a lot of instances, the girls were doing a lot better, giving us a run for money, if I could call it as such. But then you find that as you move to more advanced levels of education, at, let's say at tertiary level, you start finding the ladies starting kind of opting for other fields, maybe more of the humanities than the sciences. So for us, the experience has been that there's been a gap, especially when it comes to the mentorship, because a lot of times you find that the ladies, especially at the high school level, the critical time when you're making decisions in terms of what subjects to drop, what to specialize, what career to pursue, they don't have a lot of people, mentors or ladies they can actually look up to. You find that the people they interact with, who are, let's say, Mrs. Scientist, tend to have the male role models. So one of the things we've seen is that there's need for interventions at probably that critical moment whereby the girls at the high school or secondary school level get to interact with the ladies in the industry. You actually get to see them because, as you know, sometimes women are not very forthcoming trying to talk about the successes. So it's in terms of where I need to encourage the women who are within the industry, who've achieved a lot, to actually go and interact with the young girls, be able to show them, well, here I am. I've gone through more or less what you've gone through, and I'm excelling within the science industry. So I think for us, and that's why, for example, in Microsoft, and even that's how we started working with FAWE, whereby we have an initiative, we call it DigiGirls. So it's a mentorship program where we have women from within Microsoft and other women within the tech industry go to schools, interact with girls, spend a day with them, really talk to them about technology, career at a personal level, and have the girls be able to say, I know this person who's pursued this field, and I think I also can be able to do it.
In terms of what is out there are key issues that are very common in terms of the teachers, in terms of the stereotype, in terms of the self-esteem of the students. I think what changes really is the context in which this happens. And this is why for us as a Forum for African Women Educationalists, we are out there to actually develop interventions that would actually address some of those issues. And then when successful, we use those interventions now to engage government and say we could actually improve the way learning is taking place in the classroom. And in this case, we are looking at the teaching of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics subjects. There's a lot to do with the way the teacher is delivering the lesson. There's a lot to do with the environment in which that delivery is happening. There's also a lot to do in which the students themselves that are coming into that space. So taking that holistic approach and addressing the issues that are impacting on the learning process is very, very critical. And this is why we actually look for partnership, people that we can work with to try and resolve such issues. And our work with Microsoft has helped quite a lot. Number one, in actually creating that space where girls can see other females that have actually excelled in technology, and from that they get inspired. From that they demystify the fact that where they are coming from, they are being told this is not for you, this is meant for boys, and so on. But because they've seen other women that have actually excelled, it encourages them. And for the governments, for us, we are saying, let's test the ideas. Once they work, can we work together and ensure that we integrate that into the national policies and practice? Because unless we reach out to everyone, we are missing out a good number of population who are actually out there.
The aspect of infrastructure is a challenge. I think it probably even goes beyond just the compounding the challenges the girl child actually does face. But it's true because a lot of things that have to do with science, it's more, the best way to learn about it is touch and feel. So in terms of, for example, not having, let's say, enough laboratory, not having computer facilities in schools or connectivity or electricity, it could have an aspect because now it makes it a bit more difficult for you to understand because a lot of sciences are not very abstract. It probably might need you to, let's say, if it's an experiment, you actually need to mix some chemicals or do one or two other things. So it does play a huge part in terms of how to encouraging, let's say, the girls or encouraging learners to pursue the STEM. But then the other aspect of it is in terms of trying to, outside the infrastructure, is looking in terms of, despite that, how else can you go about trying to address that particular challenge? Because it might take some time for us to get the infrastructure at the level we want to. Because the other thing that is happening is also looking at what do you already have as local available materials. Because science is with us, has always been with us, and is there around us. So you're finding a lot of creative ways people are going around it. Whether it's issue of, let's say, you don't have a suitable facility in a computer lab, what materials do you have locally that can actually emulate that kind of lab experience? That's where, for example, teachers come in very handy, whereby you can't leave the teachers behind in trying to address this problem because you find some teachers who are very creative in terms of how they go about it. Because you're told, yes, we don't have budget for you to have, let's say, a pipette or something else in the lab. But then there's where you possibly can create some materials in the class, because without allowing the students to be able to have that touch experience, then it means that they don't understand and appreciate it, because they can't even simulate in their minds, if I become a scientist, how does it look like for me? So it's a big challenge, needs to be addressed, but then also it's a huge opportunity for us and the teachers and the students to be more innovative in how they do things.
I think we we appreciate the effort that is happening, both in terms of making sure that there are policies in place and also creating a space, more space for women and girls. But there's a lot more that needs to be done. From where we are coming from, we recognize that the governments are making steps, but having a policy on its own is not enough. We'd like the government to do more. We'd like the government to put a monitoring mechanism that ensures that implementation actually happens on the ground, and so that the intended beneficiaries actually benefit from that. The other thing also is, the gender is a socially constructed practice, if I may use it that way. Right. So it takes a lot of time to actually change that practice. But we recognize that government is making every effort to make that happen. But they need to be more impressive and get all the stakeholders involved, so that when the change happens, it doesn't just happen in one particular area, but it happens holistically. It happens with the person that is implementing the policy. It happens with the person that is benefiting. It also happens with the person who is actually implementing the policy. Once we reach that, we'll see that there will be more opening spaces for girls to interact. But we appreciate what is happening.
When it comes to policy, one of the benefits we have, for example, such an organization as Microsoft that has a global presence, is that we can be able to pick on a lot of learnings from across the world. Things that have gone well, things that have not gone so well, and from that we can be able to advise, be able to encourage certain practices. The whole idea is, we say we're in a global village, so why not learn from the people on the other side of the village? So one of the things we're able to do is we're able to look at practices happening across the globe. Some countries who probably have similar experiences, others maybe a bit different or even more advanced, but it gives an opportunity. And then the other thing is that for us as Microsoft, we work a lot with non-profit organizations such as FAWE, who do a lot of work on the ground. So they interact with sometimes some of the most disadvantaged segment of the population. So it means that it gives us an opportunity to really test out ideas, sort of like in a small group setting, such a way that you can be able to say, when you propose that this policy needs to be in this way or needs to be crafted this way, it's based on practical experience that actually happen on the ground. And then now you can augment that with other examples coming from across the world in such a way that then it means that the policy is richer. Because the whole idea about, especially when it comes to innovation, is that sometimes policy takes some time to develop. But the thing is that it happens with innovation is happening very fast. So it means we need to be able in such a way that to be able to propose policies that are forward-looking, more than looking backwards, in such a way that the policy will be relevant for the next 5-10 years possibly, instead of having a policy that as soon as it's implemented or put in place, it's actually old. So I think that's really what we are trying to do as Microsoft.
Maybe two things that stand out for me. Number one is when you're talking about the policies that exist, there's a lot of ignorance about people not knowing exactly whether those policies actually exist or not. And for me, that's worrying. It means the policies are out there, but they are not known by the people who are implementing. So it depends on who you are talking to as well. For me, that is critical. The second one is when you're having a conversation, everybody feels like they understand, but the action that happens is completely the opposite.
Shows that they probably didn't understand.
Really trying to change that, for me, it's the biggest thing, and I keep saying it has to be a collective responsibility. It's not something that can be done by one person alone. But I want to add on to what Alex has said in terms of the advantage of working with an organization like FAWE. We have a presence in different countries. So the way we draw experiences from these countries to actually package, even when we are developing an intervention, has helped us a lot. Because sometimes what is working in Kenya may not work in Tanzania, but may work in Malawi. But drawing experience from Kenya and Tanzania even perfects the intervention when we are starting it in Malawi. So that collectiveness, for me, has also helped us to move forward when it comes to influencing policy or developing interventions to showcase what would work in promoting girls' education.
So what we do is that as Microsoft, for example, under the Philanthropies program, which I manage for this particular region, we do give grants, cash grants, and typically for us, we support the NGOs, as we call them, or the not-for-profit organizations. And the idea about the grant is really to supplement what the organization is already doing, because now, of course, you need a bit of money to do a few things here and there. So we do provide that grant. The other thing as well is that we do encourage a lot of working in consortiums, where we have multiple organizations working, whether it could be a nonprofit, it could be government, it could be another private sector, it could be the likes of the United Nations. And the idea is that the challenges we're trying to address, none of us can sort it out by ourselves. So then we're able to come together collectively and be able to see what is it that each of us can bring in place. Yeah? Some people bring in some finances, some people bring networks as well, some people bring other infrastructure, and then when we work all of us together, then it means we're able to do a lot more. Because even from this particular meeting, we're having tomorrow another session whereby we're calling it a consultative workshop. So here we're having different partner organizations coming together, all of us coming together, first of all, to look at what is the areas we specialize in, what is it that we are good at, what can we bring on the table. So and then from there, we're able to see these are the things we want to work on together, because we want to set at least, come with a number of areas we can be able to work on for the next 5 years. And then each of us is going to bring different resources. So once we do that, then we are able to as much as it's a big challenge, each of us is able to put in the little we can, and then we put it, and then we're able to solve the issue. And then the other thing is that now, for example, looking at organizations such as Microsoft, whereby we are willing to invest in areas that there's a bit of uncertainty. Yeah, it's almost like we're taking a risk. So you'll find that the kind of support we give as Microsoft to organizations such as FAWE is sort of like a seed grant to spur. Yeah, that's why the program we have, we call it Youth Spark. The idea is to spur. And then now, once people can be able to see some results, it means that we can bring, for example, governments. Because one of the things we know, governments is one of the biggest players. And once the government comes in play, then you're able to actually scale up. So that's kind of how we approach it. We put some level of funding into the program. We bring together various partners. Each of us contributes, whether it could be financial, it could be in-kind support. And then the idea is to spur a bigger action along the line.
I came from a background where the interest in mathematics was generated from at household level, my parents. But when I went into the space, within the learning space, it was the opposite. I had teachers who actually felt that is not the space for women, and therefore women should not be active in mathematics. And so I used that as a challenge. But each time I got an obstacle, I would go back to my father and say, this is what is happening in class, and I feel discouraged. My father would be like, do you believe you can do it? Yes, go for it. So I got that encouragement, and I think that's what inspired me to be a teacher. When I finished secondary education, I chose to go and teach mathematics. And I'm very proud that I chose that. I went in, I taught mathematics to girls. And I think for me, one thing is that makes people feel mathematics is difficult. It's the way it is taught. It's the way the teacher delivers the lesson. But I also like the fact that I went through a process where I also taught teachers of mathematics in terms of how do you make it simple? How do you tell a story whilst you're doing quadratic equation? When I'm dealing with sets, for instance, and I want to define what a set is, and I'm looking at fruits and I'm looking at different kinds of fruits, and I want to put them together, would I say I have oranges and mangoes and so on, or would I say I have fruits? You know, it's about pick out things that the people are actually using out there and bring them into the classroom. How do you classify sets? How do you find a common set, a common member of the set, and how do you define that particular set? Set is something that is seen as abstract and it has to be done, you know, in a certain way. But when you bring in practical things or things that the children are actually using in everyday life, it becomes very simple. Okay. The other one is around, you know, when they say mathematics is difficult and so on, and I ask a girl who is cooking, and I'm asking them, how did you come to prepare ugali? What actually did you do? And when they define that and you start, building that case and telling them you're actually doing some mathematics in there, because you have to make sure that you have good proportion of water, good proportion of this, and also good proportion of heat. Are you sure you did mathematics? And they're like, oh yeah, so that's mathematics. So it's hard, just how you create that interest. And the next time I pick another example, you see the girls getting interested and so on. And by the time they know it, they are doing differential calculus.
Without
realizing that
that's
this is what they are doing.
For the girls to see themselves as being creators and being innovators. They can be the person who creates the next innovation. And there's no reason they can't do that. And the good thing with some of the advances in technology is that it gets simpler. The irony of it is that as the technology gets more complicated, it actually gets easier for the person to use. So it means that even if you have shortcomings in infrastructure, they literally have. Even if you have access to computer labs, a computer somewhere in your school once a week, or it's all that you need, because now, especially with the internet, once you get into the internet, you can do literally anything. So I think it's asking the girls to look at themselves